So question number 3, are you ready?
Always.
Do you think theists and atheists can coexist peacefully in society? And I need to clarify what I mean here, because obviously I'm an atheist, you guys are theists and a deist, and we can coexist peacefully here. But I'm talking about in wider society. As
No.
Nick hated that question. Nick just hated that question. He's just left. Maybe that's the start of the universe dying, Harry.
Oh God, we lost Sheffield.
So, do you think? So, I'm talking societal levels,
awful,
social level.
On a social level.
Yeah, not on an.
You mean like on,
not like us here, but like can
you mean like on a societal level? Rather
yeah. Because obviously we're friends and we have different religious beliefs, but you know, there are, on a societal level, can it happen?
Who wants to go first?
Harry, you go first, because you started the thought train earlier.
Sure. I do. I think it can happen. I think it's. I don't think that theist and atheist points of view are incompatible. And I think that as long as they approach one another with the intention to learn, with an open and honest intention to learn, if they approach it with intellectual honesty, then they can not only coexist, but they can thrive. But that doesn't seem to be the case so far. Obviously, there's like a political tinge to conversations around religion, mostly coming from America and the evangelical right, but also obviously because religion is tied up with a lot of world conflict. So there's this conversation about religion becomes kind of like inherently charged because we aren't approaching it with this with the intent to learn. We're like you were saying earlier, what I was picking up on earlier was adversarial nature of conversation online. People are having the conversation about religion and atheism in order to win points on the other side, rather than to expand any kind of personal understanding. And it's like you said earlier about people feel the need to counter this argument or counter that argument. And when we were talking earlier in the day about people sort of almost studying up on individual parts of the discourse so that they are better equipped to go into these debates, but they're not learning. They're not studying to learn. They're studying to be better armed when they encounter these ideological confrontations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is possible, but it's absolutely not where we are.
I agree, and I think what was I going to say? I think it's kind of like what I've seen is mostly from America. I think that there's like this kind of conflict seeping out into other people because of the international nature of the internet. So people are seeing, like, for instance, this kind of like shutting down of atheism, or atheists not getting jobs and stuff, this essential persecution, I'm going to just use that word, of atheists in America, and thinking, oh, okay, that must be happening here as well. And in the UK, it's not really. That's okay. My camera will come back on. There we go. So I think I agree with you, Harry, there. But Sam, what's your thoughts on it?
In theory, yes, we can live all peacefully. But I wouldn't say happily. Because as Christians, our hearts should break for everyone who doesn't believe. Because we want to share the good news and help everyone find that peace and that love. So, yeah, I'd say we can definitely live alongside peacefully, theoretically. But as Harry pointed, it's not the way the world goes. As a Christian, you say you make decisions in the spirit or in the flesh, and the flesh is what you want, and that's the stubborn, that's the harsh side of you. And making decisions in the spirit is, all the love, the joy, the kindness, the goodness side of things. So when you make a flesh decision, you can stand your ground, and Christians do it as well. Well, a lot of them do, including me. Is you'll fight a corner when you don't have to. You would rather fight a point rather than show love.
Yeah.
And that is
the turn the other cheek lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess you touched on a point that I was kind of eager to explore, and I'm wondering if Nick would be able to explore this as well, coming from a different denomination. But I think a kind of point of contention for atheists is this bearing witness aspect of Christianity specifically. So, I think that's obviously a motivation of a lot of Christians, is to bear witness and to spread the word of God. And obviously, if you're an atheist and you're like, a lot, especially in America, a lot of atheists are isolated in their communities. So it's almost like all of the theists in that community are attempting to re-persuade or reconvert that individual because they are an atheist on their own, kind of thing. And that can cause quite a lot of friction. So do you think that it would be possible for theists, especially Christians, to allow atheists to exist without attempting to bear witness on them? Does that make sense?
It is. Oh, go on, I'll let Nick have a go. Okay, I'll go.
Nick?
Yes. I can hear you. Sort of.
Yes.
Did you hear the question?
Is it my turn to speak?
Did you hear
Yeah,
what
just
I asked?
about. Yeah. Yes, about. I think the first question was about atheists and non-atheists living happily together, and the second one was about Christians spreading the word. Is that right? Am I on the right track?
Yeah.
Okay.
So specific. Do you need me to speak a bit louder?
No, it's my internet, I suspect, rather than anything.
Okay, so specifically, is it? So there's a point of contention from atheists where, because especially in America, because they're usually isolated in their communities, and they become maybe a bit adversarial because they have a lot of religious people and a lot of Christians trying to reconvert them, because those Christians individually are trying to spread the word of God. Yeah, so they want that individual in that community to become Christian again. So do you think that atheists can exist without kind of sorry, I've forgotten what that last part might. Could you think that
without being put under pressure in a
yeah,
way
exactly,
by Christians?
Yeah. I mean, it depends who's doing the pressure, doesn't it? So you're right. There is a degree of evangelicalness to any Christian denomination. That generally means spreading the good word. And there are various ways you can do that. Some are more potentially intrusive than others. So, there were groups at university, for instance, which were much more on the basis of going to convert people, going to have specific conversations about faith fairly constantly, for the very valid reasons Sam set out. If you believe that, non-Christians aren't going to heaven, then you've got a very clear and in that sense very reasonable motivation to try and convert as many people as you can, because you want to stop as many people going to hell, in your opinion. And that makes sense in its own terms. But in terms of my personal view, I mean, like I think what we discussed last week, I don't think you necessarily need to be Christian to go to heaven. So in which case I'm perfectly happy to live alongside atheists. And then in terms of spreading the good news, I think there are various ways you can do that. For instance, I talked briefly about doing sort of activist things, and I still do activist things, and that's based entirely on my faith and my interpretation of that faith. And if people want to speak to me about that, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine. But I've always been relatively clear about the reasons I do the things I do is because of my faith, and in my opinion, that's spreading the good word. So I'm happy with that interpretation of that act as a Christian, personally.
Well, that's how Sam, and your story about how you came into the church. That's you were inspired by the example of the people living that way, rather than they didn't try and argue you into it. They just they lived their best way, and you were
There's so many stories and parables about it. It's all about the deeds, and it's all about being that love in that area, being the Christian rather than talking the Christian. And then you let God do the rest. It's in a way you've said to them, mate, would you like to experience what God is and all this? And they say, no, I'm absolutely fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But what you do is you carry on being that loving person. You carry on doing God's work without shoving Bible verses down their throat and chucking Bibles at their face and everything else. And then what you do is you allow God to work in them. You've probably all heard the parable of the sower, about the seed being scattered on hard ground, the thorny ground, the stony ground, and the good soil. And it's all about we're out there, we share God's love in what we do and sometimes in what we say. I said, there's a great quote saying, go out and share God's love and sometimes use words. It's kind of that do good deeds. But the story of the scatterer is we go out and we be that loving kindness, and through that we are scattering seeds, and some of those seeds will land on hard ground and it won't be listened to. But we don't go over to that seed and go, you will go into the ground, you will get in there. We say, no, it's not the time. That ground needs to be worked on. We wait until God does the work, and then next time we do a good deed, it will sink in. We can only be loving, and God can do the ground breaking, is the way that we see it. So no,
Nick's dead. So I guess because my view is very similar in terms of he just messaged me saying it's very similar in the sense that I think that part of the destigmatization of atheism needs to be about showing that atheists can have morals in the absence of having a guiding figure. And that it's a very similar premise to that. It's a very similar concept that rather than trying to tell people atheists can have morals, atheists can be good people, atheists can do good deeds in the absence of this stuff, will demonstrate to people that say things like people are atheists just because they want to sin, for instance. And I think it's a very similar kind of thing. And I think that like even if people don't convert based on that. You know, you're doing good deeds for someone, you know, and that's it, you know. And like I'm not out here trying to convert people to atheism. That's not my bag. I'm not a converter. I'm not an atheist evangelist. Evangelist.
Yeah.
Which there are people who go out of their way to try and convert people to atheism, or deconvert. They call it deconversion. And you know, that's not what I'm about. But you know, I think there will be people who look at atheism. I think there will be people who have like either a lack of belief or don't believe that God exists, who are convinced that atheists can't be moral. Yeah. And therefore they kind of stay in their religion. They're almost like closet atheists because they feel like they need this framework there. And I think that, you know, showing people that this can be the case will be the key to just helping them on their journey, you know, in terms of finding actually what they believe and being okay with that. Because we don't choose what we're convinced by, do we? Like, none of us choose to be convinced by a certain argument or whatever. We're convinced by what we're convinced by. And just changing your opinion or just changing your belief on a whim, you know, isn't possible. You can't go against the information that you have in your head. Yeah. If
people actually, because I've seen those arguments made. I've seen people saying, you know, if you don't have a religious tradition, then where does your morality come from?
Yeah.
But I guess I've always assumed that what they were saying was, how is your morality codified? You know, it seems odd to me that they would think that atheists can't be moral.
Well, so like, let me
not just that. not just that they don't have a moral system, but that they just can't be moral.
Yeah, so there's a few different like schools of thought on this. So the first one is that atheists are only moral because of Christian foundations or religious foundations, depending on the religion that is the predominant religion in the area. Yeah, so it's like
the religion is leaking, sort of thing.
Yeah. You were brought up in a Christian country, therefore you have Christian morals, that kind of thing. Yeah. There's a second thought of it that people are atheists. They know God exists, but people are atheists because they want an excuse to sin. So they deny God and suppress God in order to do that.
Right.
And then there's like a third school, which is that atheists can act morally. Wait, is that no? Yeah. So it's basically those two. Those two. So it's not necessarily that atheists aren't moral, but it's usually that those morals come from a so if we think about morality as either objective or subjective, yeah, a lot of religious people will say that if atheism is true, then morality is subjective because it's about the opinion of the individual rather than there being like a higher power that's organized what morality is.
Right, because you have to decide what's right and wrong.
Yeah. So but my view on that is that there's some very kind of strong evidence to suggest that moral behavior is the best behavior for a group. And
I think we talked about this last time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you know, if you accept evolution, then you kind of will agree that that in order to evolve, you needed to be the best. It's natural selection. So the fittest will be the ones that are survive, and as a result of that, pro-social behavior inbuilt into humans is the best situation. So it's kind of like it comes out of genetics essentially. And I'm not saying that there's ethics encoded in our genes, but we have the ability to think like other people and empathize, which I think is encoded in our genes. And the
things that we have culturally decided that the things that we've culturally decided are morally good are born of
pro-social behavior,
things that will benefit.
Yeah, benefit the group generally, like not killing people, not stealing from them, not being sexually deviant. All those things tend to be pro-social behaviors that you see in animals as well. In my,
So
most animals,
so
not all
in the-
animals. Not praying mantises is certainly.
so from the perspective of someone who doesn't believe that atheists can be moral, what is their how do they explain moral behavior from atheists?
So they'll either explain it as the thing that you were brought up in a Christian country, so there's a higher power that has laid down the law essentially of what moral behavior is, and you are following that even if you don't accept God, or that the laws of morality are written on your heart and you're using it as an excuse to sin, but you still can't necessarily divert away from those moral behaviors entirely.
So in an atheist, moral actions are in fact a failing. It's the atheist. It's the atheist.
I guess so.
Failing.
Yeah. Because they're trying to sin. They want to sin.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I guess that's
or there's another part to this as well.
Sure.
Or that any moral action done by an atheist is done selfishly.
Okay. Interesting.
Which would be
just for whatever reason they deem, for whatever reason.
Yeah. So that would be like Jordan Peterson's approach, who's not he hasn't admitted. I think he's recently admitted to being a Christian, but before he was like, I live as if God exists. But he was talking about that. What's the book that you mentioned earlier? The Archipelago one.
Oh, the Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah, the Gulag Archipelago. So he uses that as a. Is it that one, or is there no? It's Tolstoy. Something by Tolstoy. He wrote a book about an atheist, and there's like a woman that he murders. This guy murders, and it's because it would be the betterment of the community. And he basically says that that's like the atheist mindset, that killing someone is acceptable because it's for the betterment of the community and that individual. Whereas like a Christian would see killing anyone or murdering anyone as wrong outright. Yeah. So he thinks that atheists would become murderers if it benefited the society or the social thing from a selfish perspective.
I see. Okay.
I've done a lot of explaining for Christians, so I just want to check, Sam, is that are those your understandings as well?
Well, there are some Christians.
I guess we go back to fundamentals. Like, do you think that an atheist can be moral? It's like a good start,
right? So, and is it one of the reasons that I mentioned?
Yeah. I think the way that I see it is a bit like a tree and its roots. Like the stronger your morals, the deeper the roots. So when the winds come and try and blow the tree down, the deeper your morals, the stronger you can be in a situation. Like when it comes to not giving in to the temptation to be selfish or to do something horrendous. So I believe, yes, they can have morals, and I think it's the same. It's the same for Christians as it is for atheists. Is you can learn, if I do these morals, and if I stick to these morals, this will be my outcome. If I stick with that, no matter what, I will eventually do this. And what you're doing there is you're strengthening your roots as you go down. Then what the Bible is to Christians is like a root digger. Is like helps dig your roots down. It's like a blueprint of a house.
Yeah. So it's so having an established code of ethics makes you more ready to deal with
whatever situation gets chucked at you.
So just
sorry,
go on.
And the Christian and the Christian ethics system is just the support structure
Well,
that guides Christians.
Like on a really simple way, like if someone offered you £1 to punch me in the face, what would your morals say?
No.
What if they offered you £1,000 to punch me in the face?
And it's getting closer.
Exactly.
Everyone has their price, Sam. Everyone has their price.
Exactly.
So-
And it's how deep do your roots go?
So
Sure,
let me just ask a question quickly, Sam. So, do you see the Bible as the objective kind of set of rules for moral behavior?
Do I see it as a set of rules?
Objective, yeah.
Like could a differing opinion still maintain morality?
Yeah.
So a lot of the Bible is because God loved you first. So it's all about being as godlike as we can in the things that we do. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's rules. I wouldn't say I follow rules. I say I'm trying to be as godlike as possible. And as I said last time, if God is love, which it says in the Bible, the whole thing around him, it is all built around love, which includes that, some sides of it is that anger and discipline inside, and sometimes that's that really delicate and relationship kind of side. So yes, I think.
Can I change the question slightly?
Yes.
Is God? I'm trying to think of a way of wording it. Is God the standard for moral behavior? So is yeah. I don't know how to explain that question further. Is God the standard for moral behavior?
So I guess you could say that, like, if God was the standard for moral behavior, then even if you aren't doing it, even if you are an atheist, say, and you act morally, you are acting more in line with God's example.
Yes, I'd say that there are some atheists who have better morals than some Christians,
right?
In that way,
and that's because they're aligning themselves more with the standard of God being the kind of like. So basically, what I'm asking is
being more the way that I see it in my head is being more loving.
Right.
In everything that you can relate to is bringing it back to love. So yes. I think some Christians can be the harshest people and the most unloving people. But yeah, there are others who are more loving and have those morals to love others.
Yeah, and I mean, can I ask you a quick question? Because I just want to make a point, and I think that I need to check your view. Do you think that Jesus was perfectly moral? Like he was like a perfect moral example?
Yes.
Yeah. So in that situation, it's not saying, like, the way I look at it, and from a Christian perspective, I guess it's not saying that you have to just be passive, because obviously we made the table flipping joke earlier, but that's a good situation where he was actually kind of like assertive. Yes, not just about
when people say what would Jesus do, I think often they forget that throwing furniture and whipping people is among the options.
So it's just interesting. So because I think that's the difference morality wise between an atheist and a theist, is that no, we don't think that there's necessarily an objective standard to work against, but we are there is, in terms of objective versus subjective morality, I would say that we don't necessarily decide what we think is moral and what isn't moral because of our inbuilt kind of like, I don't know how to phrase it, like instincts.
Well, it's holistic, isn't it?
So it's objective in the sense that it's not opinion based, because I am not going to kill someone because I understand and value their experiences, because I can see that they have experiences that are similar to mine, they have a life that is similar to mine, and I would hate to have that. I would hate for someone to lose all of that, and especially because I don't believe in an afterlife. That makes it even more, because it's like, I'm like, that's the end for them. That's it. Their whole experiences is just gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And that to me is terrible. That's a terrible thing. So it's not, I think they're just to kind of, for any religious people that may watch this, I don't know if they will, who may think that, there's not a justification for atheist acts moral. There absolutely is. I think there's fair enough justification in what I've just said for not killing someone, as there would be for God ordaining it, or not ordaining it, but God saying that that's the objective moral value.
I would be interested to see how many. I'd be interested because, like, clearly, Sam, what you've just displayed is that you've thought about your morality. You've reasoned to the base of your morality. I would be really interested to know how many religious people accusing atheists of being immoral. I wonder how many of them have examined their own morality, or are they just doing as they're told?
There's one of the most famous proverbs is, don't point out the splinter in someone else's eye without realizing the log in your own.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is, don't start digging at other people without knowing your own sins.
Yeah. And I think another one that I really appreciate from the Bible is that, and I don't know the exact phrasing of it in the Bible, but about kind of God's the only judge of character. God's the only judge of whether somebody is a sinner or not. And I think that, to me, that's lost in a lot of religious people I've seen, where they become the judge and they say you're a sinner, that's it. And it's like, well, you can't speak for God in that way, in my opinion. And that's just from, like, when I was a Christian growing up, that was very much something that was put into it. We can't judge other people because we're not God. We don't have the right.
I think I'd have the reply of, if say someone, you're a sinner, I'd be like, what, am I a mirror or something?
If you don't mind, we've been talking for nearly 2 hours, and we're on question 3 or 4.
Well, I think this last one won't take too long. Have we been talking for nearly 2 hours?
We have.
Wow, that's gone really quick. Okay, cool. So, final question. I think a lot of that is probably technical issues with Nick. So,
and you,
what?
Don't point out the splinter in someone's eye.
Wow, that was perfect timing. Okay,
smooth.